In this Down to Earth, we'll look at the main takeaways of the COP30 climate summit. That gathering came to an end this weekend with a weak compromise for a deal skipping over most countries' key demands. The agreement pledges to provide more funding to help vulnerable nations adapt to global warming, but doesn't explicitly mention fossil fuels, the root cause of the climate crisis. It also fell short in demanding that countries strengthen their emissions-cutting plans, deemed as too weak. France 24's Environment Editor Valerie Dekimpe has been covering the summit. She joins me now on set. Valerie, first of all, just give us a breakdown of what really is in this deal.
Well, expectations were really high as to whether countries would make any progress on weaning off the world of fossil fuels. And Brazilian President Lula da Silva launched the summit calling on countries to create a roadmap detailing how countries would essentially transition away from fossil fuels. More than 80 countries joined a coalition demanding that we have that roadmap by the end of the two-week conference. Not only does it not, the final deal does not include a roadmap, but fossil fuels were not explicitly mentioned in the deal either. Oil-rich Arab countries and also other countries depending on fossil fuels blocking any mention of it. So that being said, the roadmap is not completely dead. Even though it is not part of the deal, it will proceed, but outside of the UN process with a high-level summit that will be taking place in Colombia later on in April. But, you know, the fact that 80 countries pushed for this and it was not included is a major disappointment. There was also pressure for countries to address the monumental gap in ambition. So under the Paris Agreement, countries pledged to limit global warming to underneath the threshold of 1.5 degrees of warming. With current climate plans, we are on track for 2.5 degrees of warming. And so there was this expectation that there was going to be a decisive call for countries to come back with more ambitious climate plans. In the end, what we have in this deal is only a voluntary mechanism for countries to do so. On a more positive note, perhaps the deal does boost finance for developing nations, adaptation finance, with a call to triple adaptation finance by 2035 for the most vulnerable countries.
Now, this summit was pitched as the Amazon COP, the conference taking place, of course, at the edge of the Amazon rainforest. Was there anything achieved for the protection of forests at this one?
Well, little was achieved for the protection of forests. There was also a roadmap to reverse deforestation, one of the flagship announcements and plans unveiled by the Brazilian presidency at the beginning of the summit. But just like fossil fuels, that roadmap was also blocked because it was associated with the fossil fuel roadmap. It would have required countries to show how they intend to reverse deforestation to zero by 2030. That was a pledge that was made 2 years ago. But, you know, forests, as we know, they've come to be seen as a key ally in the fight against climate change because they store so much carbon. Now, even though little was achieved in terms of that roadmap in this conference, tropical forest got more money in Belém than any other climate summit in the past. So Lula unveiled at the beginning of the summit this Tropical Forest Forever facility aiming to raise at least $10 billion every year to provide an economic incentive for countries to preserve their forests. So about $5 to $6 billion were raised in total. Countries like Germany, for example, pledging $1 billion, Brazil as well. And this COP was also a moment for the indigenous movement to be more kind of officially recognized, to have a bigger seat at the table. And more than 3,000 leaders were able to take part in this summit. So that is also, you know, good for their representation in the summit.
Following the summit, we've seen a wide range of reactions. Give us a sense of how different governments, how civil society has responded to what happened.
No, I would say, you know, lukewarm praise and disappointment, to say the least. We know one thing that's come out of many of the reactions we've been getting from world leaders is, you know, the geopolitical context in which the negotiations took place. Let's take a listen to some of those reactions.
I'm not saying we're winning the climate fight, but we're undeniably still in it, and we are fighting back.
At a time of great political challenge, when you've got America, for example, that has left the Paris Agreement, I think this is a significant moment that 190 countries plus have recommitted to the Paris Agreement.
So we're not going to hide the fact that we would have preferred to have more ambition on everything. And we think that should have been possible.
So the reaction really is multilateralism survived in spite of the geopolitical context, which is setting the bar pretty low, considering that we are facing climate catastrophe. Other countries like Colombia, which pushed very hard to have strong language on a fossil fuel phase out, they have slammed the process as hypocritical because we don't have anything on fossil fuels. On the side of NGOs, there's also major disappointment and almost disbelief that countries are not making progress when it comes to addressing the root cause of the climate crisis, especially because the first time that there was fossil fuels mentioned in a deal was 2 years ago in Dubai. And since then, not much has happened. Even worse, we're actually removing fossil fuels from another final text. Certainly it is a win for petrostates and countries depending on fossil fuels. We're also seeing the rippling effects of what happens when you have a climate skeptic president in the White House, because the U.S. being absent from this process, this has certainly galvanized petrostates to pursue their agenda in this context.
All right, Valerie, thanks so much for that update on the COP30 Climate Summit. Valerie Dekimpe, our Environment Editor. Thanks to you for watching France 24. Stay with us.